Blog FPV. Today we're looking at the happy model Moblite7 HDZero 1S Whoop. I've already declared the Mob6 HDZero my favorite Whoop of 2022. Well, let's see if the Moblite7 HDZero 1S Whoop is going to dethrone the Mobula6 HDZero. So in the box you get the Moblite7. You get some stickers, a spare canopy. You get a package that has a screwdriver, some spare bi-blade props. You get a programming cable. They do include the camera protection back cover, which they removed to lower the weight of the quad, and you get some spare screws. Quickly going through the specs, the frame itself is 75 millimeters motor post to motor post. The motors that they have are the, see if I can get them into focus, are the happy model, the EX, these say RS 1002 20,000 kV. The motor shaft on these motors is 1.5 millimeters. The weight I am getting is 29 grams without a battery, and the connector on here is a PH 2.0. I'll probably swap that out for a BT 2.0 eventually. And of course the VTX is the HDZero 1S Whoop VTX, and then they have the HDZero nano camera on this, same as the Mob6. So very similar as far, well, the electronics are identical. It just has bigger motors and they put it on a bigger frame. One thing I did notice, which I think is to me is a fail. I mean, it's not a showstopper, but you can see the connector, the USB connectors, is partially covered up by the frame. I'm assuming I can kind of bend that bottom brace out of the way a little bit when I connect it to configure it with Betaflight, but it would have been nice. Happy Model has a tendency just to reuse things, which I understand. In this case, they reused the frame that came with the analog version of the Mobula7. So, but you can see that, yeah, this cross brace does interfere with the USB connector. So next I'm going to put this on Betaflight configurator and configure it. So the last thing I want to do is knock off a USB connector. So I think the best option here is to remove the 4 screws and let's move the stack up a little bit so I can get a USB cable in there to configure it in Betaflight. This is what it looks like with the canopy off. You can see now I just plugged in the USB cable. I'm not getting the interference with that cross member. To answer the question, did the Happy Model Moblite7 HDZero 1S whoop dethrone my favorite whoop of 2022? And the short answer is no, and I'll go through the reasons why. First of all, it just really bugs me that they covered up the USB connector. Yeah, sure, you could turn the flight controller 90 degrees so that it doesn't interfere, but then you're going to be running your battery sideways. I don't particularly like the feel of that. Yes, you can tune some of that out, but the flight characteristics do change. Now, that's a personal preference, but I really like front to back battery placement on whoops. Also, I think another issue is this pH 2.0 connector. With these motors drawing more current, you just get a lot more voltage sag, and I was only getting 2.5 minutes doing whoop acro, and if I was just cruising, I was getting about 3. If you push it too much, you're just going to go below the voltage of the HDZero VTX, and you're going to get a drop of video and you're going to go crash. So to me, a much better approach obviously would have been going with a GNB27 or a BT 2.0 connector, which I'll probably swap this out. Actually, I will swap this out, this pigtail. The other thing, didn't particularly, I guess, again, it depends on what kind of batteries you're using, but I found that the battery bay, you couldn't fit larger batteries in it. You couldn't fit a 650 milliamp hour battery if you wanted to get a little more flight time. You're kind of limited to like 450 milliamp hour batteries, like this Emax battery that I really like, but it is pretty limiting. That's even over what you can get with the battery selection with its little brother. Typically what they do, I'm not saying all cases, to get more capacity, what they'll do is the battery will just be longer versus wider or taller. It's really the length of the battery gets increased as you go up in milliamp hours. And then you might ask, well, this has a pH 2.0 connector. Yeah, but these are smaller motors, and you don't get as much voltage sag because they're not drawing as much current as these larger motors. So that's another niggle. As far as other niggles, I really don't have anything else. I thought the frame was pretty sturdy. I did crash it very hard. This frame, I didn't break any struts, even though it's thin, to keep the weight down. And so it did really well. Where I think it, of course, really shines in the star again of the show is this HDZero VTX. It is so fun to fly a whoop with HD video quality coming into your goggles. I just can't speak enough goodness about that in a small 1S whoop like this. Also, the flight characteristics, I was getting a little prop wash, which you could probably tune out, but this thing is fun to fly outdoors. Now, contrary to how it flies indoors, and that's another thing I'm going to get into, this thing outdoors, it flies acro, great whoop acro. It has great range. It's just a fun outdoor flyer, and I like whoops. They're even flying outdoors. So if you're looking for a little backyard cruiser and does some light whoop acro, I say this is a good quad for doing that. Now, indoors, that's where I think I don't like it, and it's probably due to my piloting skills. I'm an average pilot, but indoors, the throttle management, I was surprised that the throttle response wasn't that linear. In other words, you have to be really careful because now you could put a throttle curve to try and smooth that out, but it just wasn't, you felt like you were really struggling inside to fly this thing, like I normally like to fly a whoop indoors. I mean, I do like to fly a little faster, but with this, my throttle management, I just never really felt like I could get into the groove with that. Versus on its little brother, I feel totally confident with this, and I can really speed around my living room and and it's very linear throttle response, and I just love this thing indoors. So and for me, I like flying whoops indoors more than outdoors, and with winter here, this definitely is the better option of the two. However, if you're looking for something that is a fun backyard flyer cruiser that you can fly indoors, it's just not as easy, I would recommend this one. With that, I greatly appreciate you tuning into my channel.